Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Sabrina Paganoni. I'm joining from the Healy Center for ALS in Boston. I'm here with Dr. Cudkowicz and our patient navigation team, Alison and Catherine. And tonight we have a guest speaker with us, Luke Felix. I'm sorry, Luke. I didn't say your name right. Okay, I had the same problem. Nobody can say my name, so I apologize for that. And so we are from Seelos Therapeutics because we received a few questions about Regimen E, which is testing Trialos, which is manufactured by Seelos Therapeutics. And last time we got some feedback from the audience that we were starting the webinar, and it was hard for some people to join from the waiting room. So we kind of took a longer pause this time. I hope that everyone was able to join. I see a large number of people in the audience, and so hopefully you're all in and we can start the webinar together. So here is our weekly webinar, again, April 13th. We can go to the next slide. As you know, the platform trial is using a common protocol and shared infrastructure to test multiple drugs. And so far, we have been including 7 drugs. The first 4 drugs or regimens, as we call them, have essentially at different stages of development, but we completed enrollment for those, and we have shared some of the data, and we will keep sharing data and results as they become available. Regimen E is testing Trialos, which is manufactured from Seelos Therapeutics, and enrollment in the randomized placebo-controlled portion of the trial has completed. As you may have heard from last week's webinar, we have stopped enrollment in the open label extension period, and we're happy to take questions if there are today on the call. We're very excited that we started enrolling for Regimen F, testing a drug which is made by Calico in collaboration with AbbVie, and we will be enrolling patients in Regimen E, testing a drug made by Denali very soon. Which regimen is fairly similar in terms of having a placebo-controlled trial that lasts 24 weeks or about 6 months, followed by an open label extension period of variable duration. Next slide. Focusing on Regimen F, for those of you who are interested in actually enrolling in the platform trial, because the previous regimens have been fully enrolled. Right now, we do have hundreds of spots, literally, for Regimen F and very soon for Regimen E. And right now, we are enrolling for Regimen F at 30 sites, which are listed on this slide. Every time we launch a new regimen, and right now we just launched Regimen F, we need to bring everyone on board every site. We have a network of about 70 sites, but we need to activate them one by one, meaning that we need to make sure that everyone at the site level is trained and certified so that they can run the regimen exactly the same as every other location. And so all these sites, I have to say, have been working on this platform, doing really amazing work for the last 3 years now. And it's really amazing to see how, sites are getting more and more familiar with the platform trial concept. But for every new regimen, again, there's some additional training that needs to be done, although it's sort of less so than to start a brand new trial, but still there is some training. And that's why right now we have 30 sites activated for F, and the remaining sites will be activated over the last few weeks. Every time we activate a site, we update our website. And so you using the QR code and the link on the slide, you'll be able to know if the site near you is already active on Regimen F. Next slide. On our website, we also, again, update the list of sites. As you can see from this screenshot, this is just an example showing sites that are recruiting for Regimen F and sites that are active but not recruiting yet for Regimen F. I want to mention that sites that are active but not recruiting for F are very much active and still doing a lot of work for the platform trial. But again, they've been participating in the previous regimens. They may be working on some with some other participants from other regimens again, but they may have not been activated yet to enroll in F. And hopefully they will all be soon able to recruit for F as well. Next slide. If you have any questions about Regimen F, obviously we provide these weekly webinars so that, this is a forum for people to ask questions about new regimens. We do have a variety of brochures and other resources on our website. And I really want to thank the patient navigation team who's on the call today for really working and drafting all of these materials. We continue to draft more and post them on the website. So feel free to look them up and download them if you have any questions about Regimen F. Next slide. I also want to mention that, as we always do for every regimen, we also do have additional webinars in addition to this one that happens on Thursdays. And we record those webinars to talk about the science and the mechanism of action and really why we're excited about testing these new drugs. So in particular, for Regimen F, we hosted a webinar on March 27th, and it's available for viewing if you, again, follow the QR code or the link on the slide. I do want to mention that all of these slides are then posted on our website. So the recording for today's webinar will be posted, the slides will be posted, and they are downloadable. So if you if it's hard to catch the website or the QR code right now live as we are presenting them, please feel free to go back to our website, and you can always download the slides, and then they'll be available so that you can more easily go to the right webinar and to the right recording. We also have recordings for the other drugs as well. Next slide. I do want to mention that for Regimen F and for the other regimens as well, we really have this goal of really working hard to develop new biomarkers and really learn more about ALS science. So there is really a scientific goal to the platform trial in general, because as you know, we really need to develop better biomarkers for ALS. So in addition to testing the drugs, we can also leverage the trial as an opportunity to contribute to the entire field of ALS. And so in particular right now, because a few novel and innovative biomarkers have been discovered over the last few months, and we had a few webinars over the last few weeks to talk about those in particular, we really want to continue to share the knowledge and the current understanding of these biomarkers, which are very recent, and they continue to evolve and become, I'm sure they will become more and more important. And so we have a dedicated webinar in collaboration with Niels. Our colleague, Dr. Maragakis, who was on this Thursday webinar recently, will continue to expand on that topic. We'll continue to talk about biomarkers and especially about the new biomarkers that can be measured in the CSF or spinal fluid. And this will be an important component also of Regimen F. So I would recommend that you join the webinar. I think the date was actually recently changed. So in case you register for that, please note the new date, which is Monday, May 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And again, the QR code will bring you to the registration for that webinar. Next slide. As always, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact Catherine or Alison, even outside of this webinar, by mail or phone, to send questions, to ask about, if you have any questions about how to connect to a site or get some of the resources that I just mentioned, please feel free to ask them. And I think this was our last slide, correct? Great. And so with that, I do want to introduce Dr. Ladha, who joined us live from the clinic. So thank you so much for joining us. And Dr. Ladha, are you in a position to talk from the clinic and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. So for those of you who I have not met, my name is Shafeeq Ladha. I'm one of the neurologists here at Barra Neurologic Institute, where I run the ALS clinic and do most of their clinical trials. I'm also the co-lead on Regimen E with Dr. Cudkowicz.
Excellent. So, and if you don't mind, Shafeeq, I'll also ask you a few questions as well. There's a few people who are asking about Regimen F in particular, and so where it's available. So, for example, someone is asking if Regimen F is available at Mass General, and I can say yes. Then I think there's other people who are asking about other specific sites. So I don't know, Catherine, if you can check the status of the, I think somebody's asking about the University of Michigan, and so that, if you can check or maybe look it up during the webinar. And so also, I wanted to talk about, there's a couple of questions about people who may not qualify for the platform trial. So as you know, in general, when we enroll people in clinical trials, including the platform trial, there are some eligibility criteria. And some people, for whatever reason, whether because they don't have certain clinical characteristics, or they cannot pass the sort of respiratory function tests, they cannot enroll. So maybe Dr. Ladha, can you let us know what options do we have for people who are not eligible for the trial?
Yeah, so as many of you know, the Act for ALS was passed a year or two ago, and really a big part of that that funding was to help us develop new expanded access programs. And really, the idea behind expanded access is it is specifically designed for patients with ALS who are not able to be part of other clinical trials because of eligibility reasons. So this allows you to enroll in an expanded access program and get access to an experimental drug. It's a little bit different than a traditional clinical trial in that it's not as quite as time consuming. We're not asking the same questions as we are in a traditional clinical trial. There's no placebo, which is one really advantageous thing about an EAP. And probably the first large EAP that will start soon. In fact, it's already started at Mass General, I believe, is the Trehalose EAP. So this really is the idea, and this is totally separate from Regimen E. This will be this is funded through a different source of funds, so it's operated kind of separately. But people who do not qualify for the platform trial or other trials can potentially be part of that. There are other EAPs, I think, that are currently enrolling, and more to come. So I think it should provide people who can't qualify for trials with a lot of other options if they're so inclined to be part of research.
Yeah, and specifically, there's a few people who have asked how can one enroll for the EAP for Trehalose. And again, thank you, Dr. Ladha, for your comments. I would suggest to start asking your clinical team and your site, because again, many sites up to 25 will participate in the EAP for Trehalose. And even if your particular site is not participating in the EAP for Trehalose, then there's a possibility perhaps we can work with you and your site one-on-one to see if there is a possibility of enrolling at a different site. Always also feel free to call Catherine or Allison in terms of if you have questions about that and how to find an EAP site near you. So let me just look at, there's another question, Dr. Ladha, for you. This person who is writing is actually a participant in the open label extension of Trehalose, which is ending. And so the question is, the site doesn't have availability until mid-June. And the person is asking, I would like to be in F, Regimen F, but then obviously we don't know if at that time there will also be G available. So what are your suggestions in terms of how to discuss this type of choices?
Well, one of the things about the platform trial, the big advantage is we're able to test a lot of drugs very quickly in an efficient manner to really get an answer as to whether this is promising or not, a particular drug is promising or not. So and the other aspect that's promising is that we have a fairly minimal exposure to placebo in the platform trial compared to other trials. So now the trade-off, I think, is that when you're part of the platform trial, you are randomized to whatever regimens are active at the time. So if both F and G are randomized, you could potentially get either of those. We would like to discourage people sort of, waiting to randomize and then saying, oh, I didn't get F, so I'll just drop out. I mean, we try to choose drugs that are all very promising. So we don't have any reason to say that F is better than G. And I think if people are randomized to either of those arms, there's a lot of promise there. And in fact, both drugs have similar mechanisms of action. And so my advice would be whichever arm you're randomized to, I would embrace that and hopefully be part of that regimen.
Yeah, so there's a couple of people who said who joined late, and so we're talking about the trial that's enrolling right now is Regimen F. That's the trial that we're discussing in terms of new enrollment, and that's available now at 30 sites. More sites will join soon, and then the question is also for how long do we expect that will enroll? I mean, obviously we hope to enroll quickly, but the trial is also large, and so there's a few hundred spots for, over 200 spots for Regimen F. So obviously it's going to take, again, the next few months, hopefully soon. Obviously, there will be ideal to enroll quickly, but G again will come right after, well, over the next few weeks, it will start enrolling as well. So Dr. Ladha, so there's a question about, if somebody is in Regimen E, OLE, and then they want to rescreen for the platform trial, there's a question about the length of washout, 30 days, and how does the half-life factor in, or can you also comment in general why we have washout periods?
Yeah, and in general, the washout period is twofold. One is if there's an effect from a drug, we don't want that lingering effect in the next arm of the trial. And number two, it's a safety issue, right? We don't want two different drugs that we don't truly know the interactions between in someone at the same time. So in the platform trial, we've generally said that it is either 30 days or 5 half-lives of the drug, I believe whichever is longer. Since trehalose is a fairly short half-life, it would probably be 30 days for this.
Right. Somebody asked about the mechanism of action of Regimen F and G. Yes, both are targeting TDP-43, and yes, that's a very promising target. In fact, it's sort of a central feature of the disease. So that's why we're particularly excited to be enrolling in F and very soon in G, targeting this particular promising target. There's also a follow-up question about which medications may be exclusionary when participating in regimens F and G. There is a very specific list. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but definitely please connect with your site to make sure that, again, there's very few medications, but it's a specific list of medications that are exclusionary. I do want to mention that we allow all the medications that are FDA approved for ALS, including Riluzole, Radicava, and Relyvrio. There's a question about a port. Can you maybe help us, Dr. Ladha, if somebody had a port placed, and because different people may have had a port placed either for taking Radicava in the past or for Regimen E more recently, since the next regimens are pills, what do you recommend in terms of port management?
The first thing I would recommend is talk to your ALS doctor about this. I mean, there are patients who may use the port for other reasons. And so, for instance, for hydration, or if they're on other kinds of medications, at least as far as I know, we don't have any drugs slated to be in the platform trial anytime in the near future that would be IV. So, really, I think though, talk to your provider. There's risks and benefits to everything, including a port. And so if your provider says, well, you could potentially still use it for A, B, or C, then it might be reasonable to continue maintaining it. If they think it's not very usable, then you have to discuss the idea: do you have it removed, or do you leave it alone? In which case, most of the time, ports will sort of plot off and stop working. But we don't think that if that happens, that they're dangerous to you. So again, I think it's going to be really a discussion between you and your ALS doctor about the pluses and minuses of continuing the port.
There's a good operational question. I just want to make sure I understand the question. So basically, somebody is asking, can somebody do the initial broad master protocol screening at the site that has not been activated for F yet? And I don't want to misspeak. I know that we are trying to facilitate all of these, and again, that the activation for F actually is, a few steps. And so I believe that depending exactly on the status, that may or may not be possible. And I apologize if I don't have the full answer. I would ask, if you don't mind, sending an email to the patient navigator, and we can find out for you. I don't know, Dr. Cudkowicz, if you have any comments on this.
Yes, it's a great question. I think probably not, because there's a time window from when you screen at the master to being able to start the drug of 42 days. So if we're not sure if the site's going to be activated in that window, that might not be a very efficient approach. But we will take it back to see if a site is close, whether we might be able to do that.
And Dr. Cudkowicz, since you're on, if you can speak right now, there's a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. Somebody's asking, is the open label extension solid for the other arms of the platform trial? And if it's mentioned in the informed consent?
Yes, on both. So absolutely, both Calico and Denali are large companies, and they have the funds for the OLE, and it is in the consent form, like in all our regimens, that OLE is an option.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, for F and G, we are actually changing the nomenclature. So rather than calling this an optional open label extension, again, it becomes a more kind of more clearly delineated as an integral part of the study. And the new nomenclature is active treatment extension. So you may notice if you're enrolling for F that the name has changed, but it's essentially open label opportunity to receive active treatment. So in a way, it's the same concept, but we just change it to be more precise. Questions about Dr. Ladha, can you comment on the expectations for the new regimens? Is the expectation to slow ALS progression, or stopping it at all, or reversing the effects?
Yeah, I mean, I would say with virtually all treatments that we're exploring in ALS right now, the goal and the hope is that we can slow the disease down, or at best probably stop it. I think it's going to take a lot more to be able to reverse the disease, and I think a lot of things that have to happen to make that happen. So in terms of the promise of slowing the progression, I think regimen F and G really address a pathology in ALS that we know is very important. We know that the protein TDP-43 and its misplacement in parts of the cell where it shouldn't be underlies essentially 97, 98% of all ALS, including many of the familial forms. So by targeting that, we think that drugs like this could have broad applicability to different types of ALS and really target a major part of the pathology.
Yeah, there's a question about when we will have results from Regimen E. And so someone is specifically asking in terms of decisions about whether to join a new regimen or other choices. So to summarize, essentially, we expect the last patient, last visit in the randomized control portion of the trial to happen over the summer. Obviously, we won't know the exact date until we get there. So essentially, we need to wait for the last person who was enrolled to complete the 24 weeks of randomized control trial. After that, it takes a few weeks to organize the data and get the results. So we expect the results of Regimen E to be available before the end of the year for sure. I would say in the fall. Again, the exact date will depend a little bit on the last patient, last visit date, which again, obviously we're monitoring very closely. Questions, Dr. Ladha, about sort of the options. Somebody was actually in Regimen E, but is now 36 months after the beginning of the illness. So, what options are there since this person is no longer eligible for the platform trial?
Well, the first option is to look at the possibility of expanded access programs. And again, most expanded access programs have very fairly open criteria. So the goal is to include as many people as we can who are not eligible for other trials. I think, other than expanded access programs, it might be reasonable to talk to your ALS clinic about if they have studies that don't have a limit on disease duration. And occasionally we do have studies like that. They're usually early phase studies, like perhaps phase 1 studies, and where catching the disease very early may not be quite as important in studies like that. So that would be sort of a second option, depending on where you get your care and where you could do your research trials.
Thank you. So there's another question, sort of similar. I just want to make sure I also take that. Somebody said, if Regimen E closed, so what are the options again, to reiterate, for people who are now coming off Regimen E? I don't know, Dr. Ladha, if you can, maybe somebody joined late, if you can repeat.
Yeah, so again, I mean, I think the first question to ask is, do you qualify for other trials? If you do, then there's a variety of other trials. You could be re-randomized into the platform trial to Regimen F or possibly Regimen G. You could potentially be part of another clinical trial at your site. If you are not eligible for any trials, then you have the option of going into an expanded access program. And as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a large one organized by the Mass General team, which will include Trehalose and be available at 25 sites around the country. There are other smaller EAPs in the country that you could investigate, and part of this would depend on what EAPs are available at your site or nearby.
And now I wanted to give Luke from Seelos an opportunity to also comment, and I apologize. I was following the rapid flow of questions and kept talking. So Luke, I wanted to give you an opportunity as well.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, so I mean, essentially, I just wanted to thank everybody on this call. And obviously, it's with a heavy heart that we have to share the news of the closure of the open label portion of the study. And I understand that the decision has had a profound impact on the individuals and the community all. And at the onset of the study, Seelos and HEALEY, we had every intention of providing the open label through the duration of the double blind till the results. And it was unfortunately due to the delays in the study and the anticipated costs that we hadn't been able to essentially meet the needs of those increased costs. And we're unable to cover those newer costs this year, which is why we had to close the regimen. So I just wanted to provide that for the community. And again, this is not a decision made lightly. Both HEALEY and Seelos had met to try to find any way that we could continue this open label extension.
Okay, so there's a few questions about the EAP. Just want to clarify, the EAP for Trehalose that we're talking about is funded separately from the NIH through a grant that was actually submitted 1 year ago. That's for 24 weeks, so it's about 6 months long. That's another question that we received. And the question is also, should we be concerned about that EAP because of the financial issues? And again, the funding source is completely different, so that EAP will continue. There's also a technical question about the interim safety analysis in the platform trial. So for those of you who have been following this series, we do sort of at the regular cadence, we do interim analysis for all regimens, really. And so in the past, we said that we generally don't launch an expanded access program until the first interim analysis for futility or safety has been done on that particular drug. And so again, that's been our practice. And all of these analyses are actually regular, so basically there is any every few months we do it regularly for all regimens in the platform, so it's not any concern or any specific question. Again, they're done routinely and they continue. So there's a question, actually, Dr. Ladha, about potential synergies between any of the drugs in the trial. Can you comment on any potential synergies?
Well, at least the current arms that are sort of in startup mode probably don't have any direct synergies because they have very, very similar mechanisms. So it might not make sense to do both of them. I do think, I mean, you talk about synergies, and I think that's an important concept that is going to be, a player in how we treat this disease going forward. I think most of us are now recognizing that because the disease has multiple causes or multiple factors within our cells that contribute to the disease, if you target multiple pathways, you could potentially have a better response. So a cocktail of drugs treating a disease instead of individual drugs And we've seen this evolve already. And now we have 3 drugs available in clinical practice, which all work in very different ways and target different aspects of ALS. And so the hope is that more drugs targeting different parts of the disease may create a more treatable milieu for us to combat this disease.
Okay, great. So there's a few questions about, practically speaking, how to participate in an EAP program remotely. So, so in terms of the EAP for trialos, so there's 25 sites. There's up to 3 visits in person at the site in terms of the study visits. If somebody's coming from Regimen E, all the infusions can be done remotely because they've been already exposed to the drug. And then instead, if the program is also for people who are not coming from Regimen E, that are coming sort of from, you know, have not participated in the trial at all. And so those people who are brand new, they need to do the first 4 infusions on site. But for those of you who have been participating in the Regimen E OLE, that there isn't such requirement, again, because you've already been receiving the drug. And so all actual weekly infusions can be done remotely. So the question is, again, can you do the study remotely? And again, there are up to 3 visits, and again, most of the infusions can be done at home, especially if participated in the Regimen E EAP. There's a question about travel costs. So the travel costs, so we have a small reimbursement for participants. It's nominal costs, not, you know, so it depends a little bit, obviously, how far somebody lives in terms of whether that cost may be enough. Sorry, I've looking at the questions. So when will Regimen F be able to offer expanded access? We continue to have those conversations, and so I don't have a firm date right now. But again, the interim analysis continue platform wide, but then in order for an actual regimen to have their results be actionable, they have to have had at least a number of people in the study for a certain period of time. And so again, I don't know exactly when that will happen because we just started enrollment. So once we reach a certain quota of enrollment, we will know when Regimen's F interim analysis will become actionable, although they continue on a calendar basis. And after that, you know, we already started to have those conversations. Hopefully it will be possible to have an EAP as well. So I think I don't know if anyone else can help me. I think we took most of the questions, and really great for this participation. Yes, and sorry, last question. If somebody is in the Trialos OLE, can someone enroll in the Trialos EAP through MGH and get home infusions? Yes, in fact, you know, we are enrolling right now. I'm enrolling patients in the EAP of Trialos at MGH. So that's definitely possible with home infusions. So I think those are most of the questions. Somebody asked about Prime-C. That's a different drug that's not in the platform trial at this stage, but they have a separate trial. So I think that was the last question. I don't know, Dr. Ladha, if you have any comments as well.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we really appreciate everyone being part of the platform trial in all the different regimens. I think it's been really a tremendous advance, and it's really required not just good planning and infrastructure, but it requires that our patients buy into this and believe in it and participate in it, and only because of that has this been so successful. So I think, you know, it's a really exciting time in ALS research. We have so many different approaches to treating this disease that we've not had in the past. So I think keep participating and keep asking questions and keep being engaged.
And Luke, any final word or comments from Seelos?
Again, I just wanted to thank everybody who participated, and you know, we are committed to this disease indication, and the EAP, as Sabrina, as you said, is separately funded, and we anticipate we have the drug available for that, and that will be supported and continued.
Excellent. And please, let's regroup next week. And if you have any more questions, we'll be able to take them then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.